What's going on, everybody? This is the Tell the Story Doc podcast on All of Life TV and the most anticipated interview of the entire season, Kimyatta Cogdell.
And the crowd goes wild.
Yo, so you've seen this idea of Tell the Story Doc come about. I've talked about this for a long time, right? And there have been several iterations of it. And I think as we've talked through it, one of the things that we've always said is like, we want to get on camera together. One, because I think it's just good for people to see us interacting with one another in this way, but also because I feel like there's some stuff that like we got to talk about that most people don't talk about when it comes to like church planting and pastoring and being in the urban space. And what else? Anything else?
Yeah, that.
All that stuff. So
all that.
We don't have to like do the full like walkthrough of everything. People know we're married. We got kids.
Yeah.
I want to talk about like where our ministry started together, right? Because I feel like looking back on it, we kind of went into it really quickly. Like we probably spent a year and a half married before it was like, oh no, I think we're supposed to do something in pastoral ministry.
I will never forget you asking me, babe, I think I've been called to be a church planter. Do you know what church planting is?
Hey, so let me just say this. This is proof, because remember I told y'all I didn't want to be a pastor. I wanted to be a church planter.
Yeah. You was like, I think I've been called a church planter. Do you know what church planting is? I was like,
never heard of it.
Nah, never. I don't know what that is, but you my man. I support you. If you want to plan a church, then sure. Like I had,
if you had known what church planting was, do you think now, like going back, do you think you would have been as supportive?
No. I truly believe in and accept the provision of God, and I believe that where He calls you, He will provide. But I don't know if I would have been as gung ho. I don't know if I would have, but I was like, you know what? God didn't send me a husband, and He want to plant a church. We gonna plant a church. We gonna do whatever needs to be done.
Do you remember those first conversations, like those first few? I mean, I know you remember that one in particular.
I do. I recall you giving me some reference points because you know how analytical my mind works. So you were like a
list of different videos.
You had a list of different videos for me to check out. You had some resources for me to read into to understand what church planting was, because church planting was kind of an anomaly from my understanding of the Black traditional church, which was what I grew up in.
We were used to like church splits.
Yeah. A church might split, but you don't plan a church. A church just is. Or we didn't think about where the church came from.
Pastor such and such got a new church down the street.
Yeah. He left so and so. They meeting over here, and it's the name of it. But I had no concept of church planting in where we initiated and where we started, which was the modern day model. And I think a lot of it was steeped largely, I don't want to put the horse ahead of the carriage, but a lot of it was steeped largely in white evangelical church planting. That was the model for it. There wasn't like a Black church planting, that we knew of. There wasn't a lane for that. It was the white evangelical. That's who had championed it. That's who
they kind of owned the space.
So they owned that space. So,
which is so crazy, because like the more and more we learn, the more and more we see church planting like growing rapidly in South America and Africa and China and all of these other places.
Yeah, like they the real ones.
Well, yeah, but at the time our lens was about this big or this wide when thinking about church planting. We had we had both like quit our jobs and moved into some places that we felt like God had called us to. So you were teaching, I was working at nonprofit.
Yeah, I took a 50% salary pay.
I think I took I took a little bump. Like I went down a little bit. I was working in a nonprofit. So I just remember the moment. This is my key memory. Well, three. I'll give you three. One was me first introducing it to you and saying like, hey, I think God's called me to be a church planner. I went to scripture, like, look at what Paul's doing. Like, why is he in Corinth right now? He's planting a church, blah, blah, blah. Pointed to all these little things in the text. And then sent you to like the videos and all that stuff. Another piece of it was there was a prominent pastor that came down to Central Florida, and I was like, hey, will you go with me to see him speak? And I won't mention his name because I don't even know if he's like in good graces with people anymore. But you and I sat there and listened to him talk about church planting, and I was like blown away.
We went to Orlando, and I was blown away. I was like, oh, wow. I don't know if I was blown away because he was a prolific speaker or because of what he was saying.
No, we agree with a lot of what he was saying. I mean, and a lot of people would call it misogynistic and all that stuff now. But for us at the time, we were coming out of a very charismatic church that kind of like fell within the lane of like a cruise ship. So we talk about the cruise ship, battleship, aircraft carrier is what we would call ourselves. But the cruise ship model is, it's just like a big mega church where everything is done for you and you're not really focused on mission as much as you are just the experience. And I think we were just kind of growing sick of that. Yeah. So to hear him talking about like, when the men win the city and like discipleship, we were like, yeah, like, let's go.
All about it.
And then the third thing was about 8 months of me emailing and calling pretty much every pastor we could think of, like both locally and away all over the nation. And we had 3 calls out at one time. One with a guy here locally. We'll talk about that in a second. One with a guy who's up in Philadelphia, which that would have been a great experience for us. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we'll talk about why we didn't pick that. And then the third one was in Memphis. And you're from the area. And we were like, yo, this would be perfect.
This would be perfect.
We were like 6 months pregnant at the time. And we get a call. And somebody's like, hey, can you be up here in August? And I was like, sure. And I remember I called you and I was pacing the parking lot of my job. And I was like, babe, I know we're not going to have no money. Ministry going to be hard. I'll tell them no.
The school year's just starting in August.
I was like, I'll tell them no. And what did you say?
It's like, no, don't tell them no. Don't tell them no. Let's pray about it.
Yeah.
Let's pray. This might be the perfect opportunity. This might be what my benchmark saying has always been: be responsible with answered prayers. Yeah. Be responsible with answered prayers. And I feel like that's what that was. Yeah. I would have been at the time, 8, 9 months pregnant.
No, we were about 6 months. We were 8 months when we moved.
Right. But in August, when they wanted you to come up, we would have been 8 months pregnant. The school year would have just been starting, which meant that my teaching year would have just been getting ramped up in year 2. And it just felt like this way. Against my better mind. Yeah. It felt like this is what God wanted us to do.
Things gotta be planned out. Yeah. And honestly, if I'm being completely honest with you, in the times where I struggled to figure out whether you were on board or not, I think back to that moment. Because I remember being in the parking lot of that place I was working, and I was so torn because I knew that this was an opportunity I wanted. And I felt like it was one that God was setting up. But I also felt like it was going to be a complete disservice to you and the things that God was doing in your life.
Because I didn't want to go back home.
Yeah.
Contrary to what most people would think, I was like, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go back home.
But you did. I will never forget. The moments that have been most impactful in our marriage are the moments where it doesn't even feel like you have to think through it because God has made it just abundantly clear. And you were like, no, let's go. And I was like, whoa, what do you mean let's go? And that kind of formally started our time in ministry. Because I had done some stuff before that, but not anything on that level. So fast forward to Memphis. How was Memphis? If you had to give like a 1-sentence summary of what Memphis was like, Or maybe 3 sentences. Like, how would you summarize that experience?
Memphis was euphoric.
I didn't expect that.
Memphis was euphoric.
No, you mean the city or the season? I'm talking about the season.
The season.
Okay.
The season. It was challenging. But it was what I think we both prayed that ministry would continue to be like for us. I don't think at the time we realized how important family support was at that time, and the fact that we did have family support there, which is so important when you are a new parent and you're just raising a child. And my family was right there to help us with the baby, with Robin at the time. But I say euphoric because it was everything we wanted. It was sound teaching. It was community. It was diverse.
Discipleship.
There was discipleship.
Yeah.
It was organic. It didn't feel forced. Man, it was everything. It was everything. Our time there, with Fellowship Memphis, which I know you'll roll out, but it gave us a foundation of what church should be, which was what we had longed for so long.
Yeah. Fellowship was the type of church we felt like God was calling us to plant. And for us to have that experience was good. And I know it was good for me. Like, I know it was hard for you. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those seasons where it was like, it was good, but it was hard.
Yeah.
Because we're still pretty early in our marriage.
We were. And we took such substantial cuts. So during that time, it was like, I ain't gonna lie,
y'all. I was getting paid like $18,000 a year, and that's like not enough,
bro. We were so broke.
Every time there was like a church gathering where there was food, I used to just take all the food home.
Bring whatever extra home you got, babe, and we eat off of it for like 2 or 3 days. But thank God for my mama. We stayed with my mom for a few months. Yeah. And then thank God for Fellowship for getting us housing in like seminary housing or whatever. We got housing, which we had a huge 3-bedroom apartment. But we was broke. The whole time. And I was commuting, some of my shout out to my Fairwear babies, because I know they'll support whatever I'm doing. Yeah. But I was teaching at Fairwear Comprehensive High School at the time under Principal Diane Watkins. And
you're going to shout everybody out.
I want to shout them out because I know my babies will watch. But I was commuting an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, taking Robin, then driving back to work, then picking Robin up 30 minutes away, then driving back an hour back home. Yeah. But it was worth it. It never felt cumbersome, because when you would come home from all day at church and you got to sit under Hassan and going to do discipleship things and or just sitting in the office and all day, you'd sit in the office all day and talk with Josh or talk through church stuff. Yeah. It was a different side of you in ministry that I had ever seen. Yeah. And so it was all worth it.
Yeah. I think what made that season so sweet was, and it was probably good for you to see, and it was good for me to experience, was I had literally begged for that experience in our home church, like in the church that we were members at the time, or just prior to, at least. I had begged for that, and that experience, like, it made up for everything that I couldn't get here. And looking back on it, nobody would say it was perfect, but it was close. Like it was one of the best experiences we have had, and it was the first time I felt like there were men and women who prioritized us and didn't just say like Byron, but like Kimyatta. They were constantly like inviting us to stuff and wanting to befriend us, and we probably met the most impactful couple on our marriage while we were there in Hassan and Tiffany. Even we probably didn't spend as much time with them as we should have, but they made just a huge impact on our marriage at the time. For sure. This is typically not how the podcast goes. I usually ask like a lot of different questions. Sorry. We're like walking the line. So I want to ask you specifically about discipleship. right? So like you had the experience when you were first coming to Christ where you kind of learned most of your stuff on your own, you know, just the Lord just growing you up. I think he gave you Delora as just like, you know, a gracious presence for you. And then there's some little things sprinkled throughout. But for the most part, that first season of you walking with Jesus, you were kind of on your own.
Yeah.
And then we get to Memphis and you were a new mom. Mm-hmm. So as much as you would have liked to be in that space with other women, much of that experience, especially the first year, you were kind of on your own too.
Yeah.
And then we moved back, and to our surprise, everybody treated us like we had it all figured out. So then we're on our own too, because, you know, people are looking at us to be the leaders when we're like, hey, like we would still like for people to pour into us. My question is like, how difficult, like how would you describe the difficulty of being discipled as a woman? And I'll just go ahead and say like a Black woman as well, who is married, working in the faith, you know, married to a pastor.
Non-existent.
Okay.
Because for one, as a Black woman, I just could not relate. Like I just could not tap into, for one, I had trouble there, which may have been on me. But for two, being what they would say bivocational, you know, like I was raised that you don't work for passion, you work for provision. Mm-hmm. So my career, not only was it fulfilling, but I was working to provide for our family. Mm-hmm. And that was challenging because I can't come to your Thursday morning Bible studies and meetings because I got to go to work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I just couldn't do that. So once we left Fellowship Memphis, there were little to no opportunities for discipleship. Mm-hmm. For me as a Black woman, a working Black woman of a pastor's wife, none of that really, like it didn't vibe. Yeah. It just didn't, I just didn't have those opportunities.
How do you feel about that though? Like what is it? Has that like built resentment in you? Has it built hunger in you to, you know, address it? Like, have you just kind of pushed it to the, you know, in the back of the closet? Like, how do you feel about that now?
I think I've just pushed it in the back of the closet because that's my personality. Mm-hmm. Is whatever it is, what it is, you know. I mean, we get it out the mud anyway. You know what I'm saying? So,
do you feel like that could be pulled out? Like, is that something you kind of given up on? Do you still feel passionate about it? And then how does that impact the women who want you to disciple them now?
Well, I think that it is twofold. Like, I think that I still desire that relationship. I desire discipleship desperately. And it does make me feel inadequate because in the textbook, there's a discipleship downline, mm-hmm. right? Like you're discipled and you're a disciple of so-and-so, and then you disciple other women. Well, I feel like my discipleship has come from such a myriad of places, from like a puzzle of places. And granted, I feel equipped to disciple other women. Sometimes I question myself, you mm-hmm. know, like what if someone ever asked me, you know, who discipled you? Mm-hmm. Then I don't know if I would have a clear-cut answer, you know, of that. So sometimes I do still desire that discipleship, but I don't regret not forcing it. Mm-hmm. I don't regret that. I think that once we came back, like, you know, it's almost like the Nene Leakes clip, like, who gonna check me? Like, who gonna disciple me? You know, like.
No, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I also feel like it's one of those things where you just have to always be open to it, right?
Oh, yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's not, I don't think what you were saying is you're above discipleship. It's just until you get to that place.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Like, I'm not saying I'm above it. I desperately still desire it. Mm-hmm. I just don't feel like there was anyone equipped or prepared or ready mm-hmm. to disciple me once we moved back to Daytona.
Yeah. Or at least no one that we met.
No one that we met.
Yeah.
No one that I was aware of or that was available at the time.
Do you feel like, and this is really on the spot because we haven't had this conversation, but do you feel like you have offered yourself up enough to be discipled? Because part of discipleship is this idea that you have to lose your life. Like you do have to like move out of comfort areas into discomfort. Do you feel like you even have the space for that right now?
Immediately, no.
So it's kind of your fault a little bit.
Yes, immediately, no. I try to create or curate such a structured life, you know, such a planned, programmed existence of work and family and church that discipleship takes some inconvenience. And those are some things that I've learned. And some other things that I've just recently, God has placed us in a position of accepting almost. Like it just doesn't happen on your terms. And I think for a long time, I wanted it to fit into this pretty box and schedule. And discipleship doesn't fit into a pretty box or a schedule. Discipleship is one of those things where I think I learned through reading a book. The best form of discipleship is allowing someone to live life with you.
Yeah.
Is to
organic discipleship.
Organic discipleship is to invite someone into your space and let them see you walk out Christ with your family and with your personal Bible study time and with your personal prayer time. To show them practically a practical application, which is strange because I never addressed that to discipleship, but I know through teaching, through pedagogy, that's the best way to do it is to show someone how to do something. So I would have loved for someone, but it's challenging. I think it just has to be a priority.
Yeah. I would say, as you were talking, I got the image of Priscilla and Aquila, where I think Paul is particular about displaying their movement as a married couple.
Yeah.
Whereas in traditional discipleship models, I say traditional, not based off of the tradition set by the original church, but off of what we've seen in the last probably 100 plus years. Traditional models say, no, a woman grabs another woman, a man grabs another man, and they walk together. What I believe that God has done with us, as I reflect through us bringing people in our home, moving people in, in our yard, living in the same facilities as us, sitting down with people, having dinner together, and all of those things that God has allowed for us to do in the last, 8 years or so. I think that's our ministry together. And I think God has used us as a couple to help impact the lives of some of the people who are older and younger than us. So I would encourage you, just saying, although you may not have had that sit down model where you walk through the scriptures together, much of what the Lord has done with you and with us has given us the opportunity to like impact people's lives directly as a family and as a couple. Because I'm gonna be honest with y'all, the times where we've had people live with us, that ain't my call. That's Kimyatta's call. Like Kimyatta has made that decision more often than not. And that's happened multiple times. The times where we've given out of, just sacrificially, or we stop on the side of the road, or all of those things, most of those times have been because of something the Spirit has said to you. And I believe that the Spirit uses you to push me in whatever direction the Lord is to have us go in. So I appreciate that part of it. And I don't know if you have thought through that in that way, but I honestly believe that that's how the Lord moves in you the most, is, giving you the motivation to say, no, I think we should do this. Like I even think about FCA. Like they called us to do FCA a few years ago, and I was adamantly against it. Remember that? Like I was like, no, I'm not doing FCA. We are planting a church. Why does everybody want me to do everything but plant a church? And in the middle of my rant, you were like, no, I think we should do it. And we had just had a conversation about not having enough time together as a family. You know, so And I would say, and I would love to hear your reflection on that. The time we spent a year with those girls is probably one of the most impactful times of ministry that we've had together.
Yeah, it's definitely probably my most impactful time of ministry. But I would love to hear how it worked in your life.
Yeah.
Because for me, it was a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were close to college age. You know, I remember some of what I would call my most successful discipleship relationships were having young girls sit in my classroom during lunch period and talk about Jesus, or talk, me giving the Bibles and helping them, explaining the gospel to them. So to me, this was an opportunity. No, we're right here at Cookman's campus. Mm-hmm. This is young men and women that need to see Jesus. We're right here. We're available to them. And you've always said, I'm going to pastor the people. Mm-hmm. And if they come to church, that's great, but I'm going to pastor the people.
Yeah.
So I thought this was an awesome opportunity to pastor the people. So it was amazing for me to see young people that wanted to know Jesus, that were in college, but trying to live out Christ. So I would love to know how you balanced planning a church, but also leading FCA and leading our family at the time too.
Yeah, it was, it took some getting used to. I mean, honestly, like I said, if any of our girls are watching, any of our student athletes are watching, God bless y'all. We love y'all. Dylan just got a contract to play basketball professionally, all that stuff. But anyway, I did not want to do it at all. And I only did it because you did it, or you wanted us to. And I had to wrap my mind around leading young people because and you can attest to this. When we first started ministry, we were like, yo, we are not going to build a ministry based off young people. Like, people are attracted to young people who are married and are semi-attractive, so we're not going to play that card. We're going to get down and dirty and gritty. And what did the Lord do? He brought us young people consistently.
Like, to this day.
To this day, he's doing it. And I just did not want to do it. But the win for me was I had watched you for about 4 years feel like you didn't have a place in ministry. Mm-hmm. And our FCA time, if nothing else, assured you that no, God is using me too. Like, not just my husband. He's not just using me in the way of like birthing children and being supportive. Mm-hmm. Like, I have an opportunity to make an impact on another disciple of Christ's life. And we still have relationships with those people to this very day because of a year of us. And it was during COVID. So we were meeting online. It wasn't even like we were like in person in their face. We were meeting online, but it gave us an opportunity to like really, kind of mess up in a lot of places, but also like give as much as we had without feeling judged.
Yeah, and they were so graceful though. Yeah. They were so full of grace, and they allowed us the opportunity to grow with them.
Yeah.
That was a huge part of ministry. I think for both of us is we didn't have to provide a big facility. There was no entertainment. At first, we weren't really buying them anything. Yeah. There was no...
We were sending them DoorDash gift cards.
Yeah, we would send them DoorDash gift cards for showing up to Huddle, is what we called it.
Yeah, we had Huddle like Tuesday nights at like 7 p.m.
And they would be coming straight from practice.
During COVID. And they still showed up online or Zoom. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they would be in their bed or like going to Chick-fil-A, but they would log on. And I thought that was like a really great moment in our ministry career. Sure. Fast forward to, let's talk about identity for a second. So how do we even start the identity? When did you know? Like, okay, we're really doing this?
When we went to Memphis.
Really?
Yeah. When we went to Memphis, I was like, okay, he's serious. I never questioned. I always knew from the time God told me you were my husband, I always knew that you were called to be a pastor. So that was never a question. But starting a church, when we went to Memphis, I was like, okay, if he's going to pick our family up and move us, states away to an unfamiliar place for you.
Yeah.
And not an attractive place. You know, you hear of Memphis not being a very attractive place for a lot of people.
I loved it though. I love Memphis.
Yeah, we love it. We love.
Oh, Memphis. It's not on one day too.
It's not on one day.
Yeah.
We loved Memphis, but I knew then if this is what we're doing, then it's legit.
Okay. I didn't expect that. I thought maybe it took some time for us to like gather some people and all of that stuff.
I wasn't trying to come back to Daytona. Didn't have people in our house week after week. Like, so I am not the social one. I am not the people's person of the two of us. Our startings with Identity when we came back was we were hosting gatherings in our home.
Yeah.
That was a wild time.
It was a wild time.
You was a wild boy for that.
Almost had to knock somebody out one time. Remember that?
Yes, but that was from just that beginning. I was like, we in it, and I knew that God would deliver us.
You right.
I knew God would deliver us from that, but I knew then that if it was that strongly impressed upon your heart and you had peace with us going through those different stages, that
yeah, we went through a lot. Like, I mean, I think back on it, I'm like, how did we even do that? Like, because for a long period of time it was just us having people in our house. Mm-hmm. Then it was us leading at another church while church planting.
Yeah.
Right? And then, we had all these stages of theater and elementary or middle school and COVID. And throughout all that time, it felt like it was just you and me. Like, and no offense to anybody, but when it came down to like the big decisions and all of that stuff.
Getting food. When it came to the logistics.
And part of that was our fault. Like, let me just be honest. Like, part of that was our personalities because we just felt like it's easier for us to do things than it is to like delegate and have people tell you they can't make it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the time, especially in the first 2 years, it felt like it was just you and I. And then we had this experience during COVID that kind of changed everything where we shut the church down.
Oh, yeah. That was monumental.
Again, let me tell you how impactful you are. You were the person who said it was okay. We used to have a little square table right here, y'all. And I remember during COVID, one day just being super frustrated. And I sat down at a table with tears in my eyes. And I was like, I don't want to quit, but I feel like nothing is going right. Mm-hmm. And you were like, well, maybe we could just take a break. Mm-hmm. And I was like, how are we going to take a break? Like, we ain't got no money. We ain't got no leaders. We ain't got none of that. And make a long story short, we sought counsel and people told us like, no, you can take a break. And we did something. I've never heard nobody else do this, to be honest. But 3-month church-wide sabbatical.
Church-wide sabbatical.
How was that for you, by the way?
It was good. It was a blessing.
Yeah.
It was a blessing. I think it gave us clarity in the fact that we needed a break.
Yeah.
That we couldn't do it alone, but that God had called us to do the work we were doing.
Yeah. Yeah. The first month was like kicking and screaming for me. Mm-hmm. The second month was like, oh, this is kind of straight. Like, I kind of like waking up on a Sunday morning and like
being able to hear somebody else's sermon.
Yeah. I remember, remember the first 2 weeks, we had made the commitment not to even do any kind of church. Yeah. We were like, we're just going to take 2 weeks with nothing. And those are probably the hardest 2 weeks for me. I remember I went for like a 5-mile run one Sunday. Mm-hmm. Like, I was just like, I gotta like feel something. And then the second month, I think that's when stuff started to change. Matter of fact, Christmas. This is another one of the things that you led. Like, this was your thing. Somebody called us and was like, hey, do y'all have enough money to support this person who needs something for their kids for Christmas?
Immediately.
And I was like, man, we supposed to be taking a break. And you were like, we taking a break from church, not from the ministry.
Right.
And I was like, oh. And we provided Christmas for a family. And again, that was one of your things. Like, that was a moment where I was like, okay, Kimyatta really does have a heart for this. And this is God creating opportunities for her to see, no, I have something for you. Like, I have something specifically for you to do.
I think that's like the story of our church planning is that I have always felt a call to do the work of ministry, but not be in front of the curtains of ministry. I think
you don't like the show.
I don't like the show.
Yeah.
I don't want to be seen. I've never wanted to be seen, but I feel like God has called me to do the work of Christ.
Is all of that not wanting to be seen? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you think all of that is godly? Is there a little bit of something that might not be godly in that?
I don't know.
Because I realize for me that's so I don't like to be seen either. Unfortunately, I have to be. But I don't really want to be in front of cameras as much as I am. However, I realize some of that is ungodly for me because
I don't know. I just know. I always hear the voice of Christ clearly when it's time to work.
Yeah.
I never question if that is him. When it's time to make decisions, when it's time to, do the different things that executive pastors or whatever, the decisions that need to be made, those things, I'm never sure, and I want to seek counsel. But when it's time to do the work of Christ, when it's time to do the stuff that the Sermon on the Mount exhorts us to do, I never question those things.
Yeah. And again, I think your voice helps me understand it more because I can get stuck in my head. Like I can get stuck in this is how it works. And like, this is what the Bible says. And you're like, no, let's feed the people. Like,
feed them.
Let's go out, hit the streets.
Let's do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Find a need and fill it.
Find a need and fill it. All right. We ain't got that much time.
Okay,
so I'm going to ask you a few, these aren't the rapid fire questions, but I do want to hit this point before we forget about it.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier, Black, working, church planter's wife, pastor's wife. Where do you feel like that has put you in the world of ministry, the world of church planting, the world of pastoring? Do you feel like there is enough of a lane?
No, bro. It makes me a unicorn. And if I couple that with the fact that I have no desire to be an influencer.
Oh, man.
I'm a unicorn.
Well,
I just want to work.
There are other unicorns out there. I'll put that out there. But can we come up with a better?
I am your tribe.
Don't look at the screen, please. Is there a better way to? Can I offer a better way to describe it? Right. I think the lane that you're in is very narrow because I do believe there are other women out there who are working, who are supportive of their husbands and their families and trying to pursue ministry. I just think they don't get any attention. There's not any like.
It is hard for us to all find each other because all of us are behind the curtain
and working. Yeah.
When we first came into the church planning world, it was an anomaly to, for one, be Black. It was an anomaly for one to work a full-time job and not have children that were being homeschooled. And it was an anomaly to not consider yourself. So to be Black and then to work full-time and not have children that were homeschooled. All of those things were an anomaly. But then to not consider yourself a first lady or, someone that was raised in like a church leadership role or under the pastoral cloth, I guess. Like I didn't come from a family of pastors or people that were in the ministry per se. That was a challenge. That was a challenge for me. And I didn't find my tribe. There was no tribe for me. I don't know. That was hard.
It's probably still hard.
It is still hard, but it propelled us into a sphere that was unfamiliar and uncomfortable. And now I know it wasn't just us.
Yeah.
There are other people that experience the same thing. And I'm sure that we will get there, but there is a space for us. There is a space for Black church planting wives who desire and seek to support their husbands, to do the ministry, to do the work, to help provide for the family, to raise their children, but not, I don't know. It's still hard.
Do you think the success or the failure, or have you felt like the success or the failure of our church is based upon whether we fit into that mold? Like whether I can make enough to make sure you don't have to work, even though people don't know you like to work. So like, let's just say like, our church plant was funded completely, where we had enough money to where I could get paid to take care of our entire family. You were an influencer or some level of Christian author or Bible study writer. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's the mold.
And then you're a stay-at-home mom. Do you think our church would be more successful if we did that?
Yes. And I carry guilt for that. Like, not guilt that your salary doesn't support our whole family or that any of that, but I carry guilt that I am not the cookie cutter church planner's wife or ministry wife. I'm not bubbly enough. I'm not outgoing enough. I'm not gifted in hospitality. Like, I haven't. If I were better at being the textbook church planner's wife, then maybe our church would be bigger.
I feel the same way about myself, by the way.
Really?
Yeah. I don't feel like I'm the cookie cutter church planner either. Like, I don't feel like I'm the stereotypical, like, either I've always looked at it like you're either a really talented preacher or you're so baked into the cultural norms of church planting as they have swung towards conservative Baptist church planter who fits within this mold. That if you aren't one of those two, you just kind of get lost in the sauce, right? So like, that's how I felt. And like, I'm just gonna be honest with you, there aren't many Black church planting couples that don't fall into the first bucket. So like the influencer, super dynamic preacher, wear super cool sneakers and all that stuff. Like, there aren't many Black men married to Black women who are able to find success in church planting that you see without falling into that. Now, there are exceptions. We love Eric Mason. We love, a lot, Thabiti, like that's our uncle. Like, there's a lot of people who we're being introduced to now, even John O. But for a while, it felt like, oh, I either got to be like, hey guys, well, the Lord showed me this morning. Like, I either have to do that, or I have to like be like, no, it's 5 points of Calvinism and let a big denomination kind of float our church. You know what I'm saying? And the attraction of that big denomination kind of float our church. And I have felt like, even as our family is a little unconventional, it's been challenging to kind of say, ain't no mold that we gotta fit in.
It's wild. It's wild that it's unconventional for us to be a Black man with a black wife.
Well, not
that
just
work.
That. Yeah.
That work.
Yeah, both of us work multiple jobs.
Both of us work multiple jobs. That seek to teach the Bible. Love the community. Man, that's wild, though, right?
Yeah,
that's wild, but it is what it is.
All right. We're gonna wrap up in a second. I want to ask you some quick fire questions. Best part of church planting so far?
2023 in the 401 MLK building. Being true to us and who we are with no strings attached.
Do you feel like this is the most free we've been?
Man, this is the most free we've been.
Yeah.
This is good. This feels good. We have struggles from Sunday to Sunday. We have struggles, but this is the most free we've been. Maybe episode 2. Maybe we can do a part 2 where we can, go a little.
No, you can go. Go ahead.
Go a little. things weren't free when we began. When we began, we weren't free. We were puppets of a white evangelical church planning model that used us as the safe black space to perpetuate inclusiveness or inclusivity. We were safe. We were black. We were articulate.
Everybody wants Will Smith. Nobody wants Ice Cube as a church planter.
Right. We were
I'm
black.
not saying I'm Ice Cube, but I'm just saying,
We were black, but we weren't too black.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We were educated. We knew the Bible. We could float in a room full of white folks.
Yeah.
But we weren't free.
Yeah.
We weren't free. I remember some of the most troublesome parts of church planning was during the summer of duress and us having to wonder if you would get messages regarding what you posted regarding black folks and freedom. You did get messages. It just wasn't, we were not free. We were so confined and constrained to the idea of safe black folks. And that was with the funding of what I would call a white evangelical church planning system that was more savior syndrome than really trying to see the gospel being spread into a community that needed it,
Yeah.
That we weren't free. We weren't free. We were, I don't know. It was hard. That was heavy. But I feel like now being in our community and being on MLK, man, we're good. You know what I'm saying? We're good with our folks. We're good with our people. We genuinely love them. They genuinely love us with no strings attached.
Right.
We don't have to second guess the gospel that we're teaching, the gospel that we're preaching, or the gospel that we're living and walking out day to day. We don't have to hold back or from being who we are. This is the music we listen to. This is what we want to wear. This is how we talk.
Yeah.
We don't have to be always try to be cognizant of those things. And that's freeing for me. That's some of the best times for me.
So this season is the best season.
What about you?
Shout out to our church, by the way. I don't think, let me say this because I'm the people pleaser. But I genuinely feel this way. I have been blessed by, in one way or another, by everybody we've been able to lead and care for. I will say that the Lord is doing some special stuff right now. Please stop looking at the screen.
I'm sorry.
The Lord is doing some special stuff right now where I echo everything you're saying. Like when I say family, I really feel like the people who we're leading right now are our family.
Yeah.
I remember when we got that banner printed and there was a lot of different things we could have put on that banner, but I felt like this was going to be what the new season was. And this was what was going to define us as a church. So shout out to all of our people. Shout out to Identity, all of the members and the friends, family members and friends of Identity, because you all have blessed us. And man, let's be honest, that building.
Yeah, shout out to Providence.
Yeah.
We get to be our authentic selves.
Yeah.
I think for a long time we've tried to fit in a box of what we thought church planning should be, who we thought we should be as Black Christians that taught the Bible or had, expositional preaching or, we weren't charismatic. We didn't have the lights and the big facilities and stage and all of that. And just trying to fit into a box. And I feel like now we're in our lane.
Yeah, I agree. You asked me what was my favorite part. I'll probably say right now too. Just this season that we're in right now, I am beyond blessed to experience what we're experiencing now. Again, I gotta go back to the FCA period because I just felt like you were tapped in, I was tapped in. even Robin was tapped in during that time. So it just felt like our family was going in the right direction. I could probably think of some more, but yeah. All right, worst part of the church planning journey so far, or hardest? Let me say hardest, not worst.
I think that the hardest was probably some of the times where I don't know.
Okay. You sure?
I don't know.
All right.
It's been hard to see people leave that we thought were committed to the vision of identity.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't fault them for that. That doesn't make me angry, but it doesn't mean that it's not hard.
Yeah. This is much harder than what I ever imagined it would be.
Yeah. Seeing people leave. Because you question yourself, right? You question, like, what did we do? What are we doing wrong? Why aren't people sticking? That's been hard. No other period. I mean, it was a challenge to be under certain systems and have to go through the summer of racial duress. That was a hard summer, but it wasn't. I think it refined us rather than like breaking us. Mm-hmm. That was my summer of I'll never mute my black. But that was a challenge, but it wasn't hard.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, if we had to shut down identity tomorrow, what type of church would you want to go to?
Identity.
All right, let me put a couple out there for you. Would you rather go to are there any of the churches that we've been to in the past that you would rather go to? Because for me, I'm probably like, there are three things I want to try. I do want to try Anglican church, a black Anglican church. There's one down the street, St. Timothy. I really want to go there. If identity had to shut down, y'all catch me at St. Timothy. The second one is like, I just have this affinity to the black church, and going to like a missionary Baptist church that's similar to the ones we grew up in. I ain't talking about like the cool missionary Baptist churches. I'm talking about like the very like traditional.
Were they singing hymns?
I want to sing hymns. I want the book to be a little bit dusty. Yeah, like I would go back to that type of church. And then the last one, I think I would just be like John the Baptist, just like roaming, the streets. Like, like I don't want to be a part of a house church, but I want to like just be free and, we do stuff like we share the gospel all the time. Like we have people over, but we're not really trying to build a, big church.
I can vibe with all three of those. Okay. I trust your leadership.
Okay.
In all three of those.
All right. How did you process how did you know that we were supposed to be in a 401 building?
I've always told you that.
Yeah.
Always. So even our move into the Connect and our move into the 401 building, I just feel like knowing my people and then tapping into what I desire. The idea of church planning is already foreign enough to black folks. Yeah. Because we go to the church. We're so tradition oriented. We go to the church that our parents, that our grandparents went to. The concept of getting to church on Sunday morning and setting up and pulling out pews and all of that was so foreign to us traditionally. I just felt like, for one, we needed a building in order for us to be official, because I just felt like that was important. And for two, I thought that it would signify stability and commitment and roots to this community. I felt like for our community, for the Midtown community to take us serious, they needed to know that we aren't just trying to pop up and leave and go to the next opportunity. No, we are planting roots here. We're in a building. We, we want to be secure here. We want to, embed ourselves in this neighborhood, that we want to cultivate the type of relationship with you all that is a long-standing relationship, and I knew we needed that in a building. And there's just nothing like the traditional old school church building to me. You know, it just has so much historical significance and importance and meaning that I felt like it was a no-brainer.
Yeah. So again, I realize as I'm telling the story of what we're doing, Kimyatta's at the helm of like everything. So whenever we got to connect, we were driving around Midtown during COVID, and Kimyatta said very clearly, I believe the Lord has a building for us in Midtown. Before that time, we did not have a building in Midtown per se.
Right.
And we were driving down the street and we saw a building, and like it had a for lease sign. It was almost like right after we prayed and we called the owner and we jumped in. That's when we did the Connect project, and that was great. We still had to Connect today. And then after, like while we were still working on the Connect, you were like, I had a dream that we were going to have a building, a church building. And I was like, yo, we are trying to like figure this out. Like,
Yeah.
And not too long after that, we saw a church right down the street from our house at the time. And well, we weren't living there anymore, but we saw that church and pursued it. And we've been in there for 9 months now. It's been great.
What has been the most challenging part of that transition for you? Because I know that a lot of your early training and, you know, your early ideation was the church planning model of we don't need to own a space.
Yeah.
It helps us to pour into the community by renting a space and being embedded in the community where, you know, you're in a school or renting out a school space. Has that been a challenge for you to transition from that mindset and model to being into a building?
I wouldn't say a challenge. It's been, it's almost like shedding of skin. Like, it's like, I think one thing the pandemic did was made us all question our techniques and our models. And honestly, one of the things that was positive about the pandemic is it allowed for us to process all of these things inside. Right. So there are a lot of conversations you and I had where I was upset. I was mad. I might have said a bad word, you know, because I realized, yo, I'm not doing it the way that these other people want me to do it. Like, this does not work. And what made it abundantly clear that it wasn't right for us is that none of those people like came to help us in that moment. Right.
That's trash.
Where we were like really trying to figure it out. We didn't really get that support. So then we made a commitment to just say, no, we're going to do it in this way because this is the way that'll speak to the need of the people in this community. And so it didn't really hurt, or it wasn't really hard. I think deep down inside, we knew that was what we were supposed to do.
Yeah.
The challenge is, and it's this for a lot of church planners, is you can either do it the way that you feel like it's going to work, or you could do it the way that you feel like will get you funded. And if you don't do it the way that feel like you that's going to get you funded, then you run into some brick walls. Unless you're innovative and creative and you try to do different things. So, you know, my man Brandon Woodard, he said on the podcast, scarcity breeds creativity. And it wasn't until we lost money, like, remember we went through like a 6 month period where we lost about $5,000 a month of support. And it wasn't until we got to that point, we like, all right, we got to get out of the mud. What we going to do? And then we were able to get the building. When we had less money, we got the building. Matter of fact,
so much of our trajectory, right, was that struggle. So much of our trajectory was funding versus authenticity.
Yeah, it was like,
you know,
hey, here's what I think can work. And that wasn't what the dollars were going to go towards.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, there were people who we asked specifically to purchase the building, you know, and that wasn't a priority, but doing it in a way that they would have liked for us to do it was a priority. So we had to make a choice. Either we're going to like continue to pursue this, but do it in a way that we know is not authentic to us, or Let's figure out how we can do it by ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's what me and Charlie talk about, man. Sometimes you just got to go independent.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that independent period kind of helped us out. Speaking of, we're wrapping up, but shout out to Harbor Network, because I realized in these episodes, I talk a lot about being independent and all that stuff. But Harbor Network has supported us almost from day one. Actually, from day zero.
They have been such a blessing. Harbor Network has been a blessing to us. That's one of the alliances that I am I proudly boast of.
And again, that was that moment where I was like, I was on the ropes trying to figure it out, and Kimyatta said, "No, this is the way." And I was like, "Oh, well, if she likes it, I love it." So shout out to Harbor Network.
Yeah.
I don't have I have one more question, and then I'll give you some time if you want to ask me a question. Why won't you let me lock my hair up? Why don't you want me to get locks?
Just no.
I'm gonna get locks, y'all, at some point.
No, we're not gonna do that.
Well, anyway, you got any questions for me?
Where do you see identity in the next 2 to 3 years?
Oh man. This is really hard for me. It's really hard for me. Like, this is a subject that kind of makes me like tear up sometimes, because you know this, I have a fear, like a real fear, unhealthy fear of the church growing too large.
Yes.
Because what I value most is the fact that we can walk in on a Sunday morning, we know about almost everybody, and whoever we don't know, we could get to know in the next 30 minutes, right? And I do fear the church growing. However, the Lord's been working on my heart tremendously. And I do want to just get us to a place of sustainability. I want to see us in the next 2 to 3 years get to a place where not only are we sustainable, but we're supporting other smaller churches.
Yeah.
We're helping to plant churches, and we retain this factor of saying, hey, we're completely authentic to who God has created us to be.
Yeah, for real.
And there's not really a lane for us right now. Because if you remove us, there are some good churches in Daytona. I promise you they are.
For real.
But if you remove us out of that group, there's a void, because I don't think there's another church out there
ain't
like
nobody
us.
doing what we doing.
What? And I'm not saying that from a judgmental standpoint. I just think if you experience who we are as a church, you'll have to make a sacrifice to go into another space, right?
But you have to make a sacrifice to come into our space too.
It's a huge one, a huge sacrifice to come into our space. So to answer your question directly, I would like for us to have completely bought the building and have the property.
Okay.
I believe through prayer and through just conversations you and I have had that we will outgrow this building. But I would love for us to find another facility in Midtown that allows for us to grow comfortably and create a experience that's going to reach more people without jumping into being a space that's only there to gratify people's desires, right? Because that's what so much of having churches are these days. We create all of these things to like satisfy people, and we don't question ourselves about whether we're satisfying God. We just claim that everything satisfies God.
Yes.
that is so-called good. Oh, we're feeding, we're doing this, we're doing that. It's like, I don't know if that is like you really trying to satisfy God.
Yeah, every good thing ain't a God thing.
Yeah. So anyway, I would like for us to be in a bigger facility. I like for us to be at a sustainable size. I like for us to be developing leaders and helping to plant other churches. If we could check off those things, I'd be super happy. Oh, I want a staff too. I ain't gonna lie. Y'all, I want a staff. Like, I need an executive pastor. I need some pastors in training. I need a full-time worship leader, full-time creative director. Like, that's what I mean when I mean sustainable. Because I think this season has also shown me I can do a lot of things, but what I really want to do is just be a pastor.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
That answer your question?
That does answer my question.
Anything else? Parting words? I think this is the longest episode yet.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe not after you do the cuts and the edits.
I don't like to edit anything, so.
Okay. No.
Well.
We're just here. I don't know if my parting words is that I pray that the authenticity is clear. That people know we love Jesus, we love one another.
Yeah.
And that, I don't know, we just ain't gonna fly.
No flies, no faking.
No flu.
I want to tell you before we wrap up that I do truly appreciate all of the moments that you have led well in not putting a roadblock between what God wants us to do and the life that we're living, right? So when I think back to us going to Memphis, us coming back to Daytona, us joining Harbor Network, us going into the Connect, us going into the 401 building, us doing FCA, us welcoming people into our home, us downsizing our house so that we could not only save money, but also have people to live in community with. All of those things that are things that you've been integrally a part of. And I wouldn't have been able to make those leadership decisions without you. So I appreciate that. Even more than that, I appreciate you, constantly thinking about your family and wanting to prioritize family and ensure that our family is developed and taken care of and all of that in the midst of all of that. And then lastly, in the things that you truly believe God has called me to, you are the biggest cheerleader. In the things that you're unsure about, you ask the right questions to make sure that I don't just go off and wander in the dark. So I appreciate you for that too. And I just love you. So
I love you too.
Anyway. All right. Thank y'all for watching this episode of Tell the Story Doc. We got plenty more episodes lined up. I'm excited about the next few months. My commitment was to do an episode every Friday for the rest of the year. And we're almost there. I almost got it booked up for the rest of the year. So I'm excited about that. Also, we'll have a lot more things going on with All of Life TV. We'll do some stuff with Midtown Disciples, do some stuff with Connect Daytona. If you're not already subscribed, subscribe right now, like the video, share the video, and continue to live all of your life in Jesus Christ. God bless. Long smile.